promised an exclusive video for Patreons, and here it is. I thought you would be interested in seeing how I film footage for the opening sequence for Season 9. Basically today, right now, I'm going to be filming 3 shots for the opening, and the first one I'm going to be doing is a teleport sequence for the MMPR Rangers. I had this idea of, you know how in the opening of Dino Charge where the Dino Gems fly through the bottom part of the logo where it says Dino Charge? I thought it would be interesting to have these guys teleport, with the MMPR teleport, and fly through the portion of my logo in a similar fashion. Alright, so I'm going to basically set them up as if they were teleporting from an episode from the show. And the basic idea that I want to do with this is have the Rangers being teleported from on top of the rooftop. That, you know, that overly overused shot where they're always looking up. Now, a lot of times when I usually do this type of effect, I actually just take a photograph of the what I usually photograph. Because a lot of times stuff that I use is stationary, so I don't need the green screen. But in this case, I actually want to use the green screen because this is going to be a lot of... If I had to do this in Photoshop, it's going to be a lot of work cutting each of the figures out, and I'd rather just do it with green screen, so it's just a little bit faster. Now I just have to simply set them up. The only sucky part with the SH Figuarts is that there's no real hands that actually grab their belts, like in those several shots. Except this one hand for Kim. She's the only one that has the closest hand. Everyone else is just fists or grabbing weapons, so it's kind of difficult to get the figures into the teleport pose. Now, hopefully nothing falls over. Set the other camera. And film. Let's see. Take off the lens cap. Alright, let's turn off this camera. Let's set up for shots. 2 more shots. Now, the other shots, I'm basically done with MMPR over here. That's all I really needed was this one shot, because everything else is going to be done with an effect shot. So I don't really need the figures anymore, so I put them on the side. Now, there's 2 other shots that I always that I'm going to be doing, and that'll involve the Time Robo. These 2 shots are going to be replacing the beginning piece of the opening. You know how in the beginning of the opening where it had all the MMPR Zords, and then eventually it had different footage from episodes in those little circles where the explosion was going off in the background. I'm replacing that shot. I always wanted that shot replaced. I never particularly liked it, but I couldn't think of anything until recently, where I wanted... Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate the time tunnel from Time Force, and it's going to be in 2 shots with the Time Flyers. And basically recreating that, it's going to be a forward shot. The camera's behind each flyer, and they go through the thing. That's how the opening will begin. And then there's going to be a side shot where they're flying through the tunnel, I think left to right. I don't think I'm going to do right to left. And they're going to they're going to be flying through each of the years. And that's what I'm going to do. Basically kind of think of the Time Force pilot where they actually did that. That's where I got the idea from. And I have to shoot each individual Time Flyer in order to get them all together. I can't shoot them all at once because that's I got to layer them all across. So I have to do... I think I'm going to do side shot first. A little bit of a concern is that the Time Flyers are reflective because I have die-cast parts and stuff, but I think it'll be okay. Let's see, who should I go for? I guess I should go with the blue first because he's the largest one. He has all the wings. Basically, I'm facing it like this so that they're all seen sideways. Eventually, each one will be layered one on top of each other. Instead of doing it this way, because I can actually control it, if I do them one at a time, I'll be able to control them in After Effects. Like I can have them bob a little bit, up and down. One speeds up, one slows down, because everything's going to be sideways. Camera's not going to move really. These guys are just going to be slightly moving, but not obviously change perspective because they're going to be flat-duty objects. But it's easier to do it one at a time than do them all at once. red is just going to probably give me a reflection problem. That's pretty much the only thing that I have to worry about. Because he has all these die-cast parts and stuff. And that's basically it. First shot, it would be, say, this is your POV. The camera's below, above the flyers, and they're going to be flying forward. Technically not. They'll be stationary, but I'm going to be doing all the work, not with the camera. And then the side shot will be roughly like this. Oh, actually on this side. And those bob up and down, some speed up. Think of how they were in the episode, and that's basically it. I'm going to recreate that. They're going to fly through the time tunnel, and then you're going to see years pass. Alright, so let's see. First I'm going to shoot blue, because he's the largest one. I'm a little worried about green, because he is green. I do have green stickers to worry about, but I think it should be no much of a problem. I have dealt with this in the past, where... and that was another reason why I didn't have Tommy in the shot with the main 5. I was like, okay, I'm going to have to screw him, because I don't really want to deal with him, and with the green screen, he would probably be most difficult to get the green screen keyed out with the Green Ranger in place. And I feel sorry when the show has to do that a lot. When you either have a Blue Ranger or a Green Ranger, you have to switch the color of the background chroma key screen to either or. I mean, they use a few other ones that I've seen. Shows use white and red, but mainly it's green and blue, and then they have to swap them out just for the 2 Rangers, and it's just kind of annoying. So I'm going to start with blue, because he has the longest wings. I want to see how that looks. This is basically how I film a lot of the opening sequences. I think of a sequence in an episode that I thought was interesting, or a piece of like an effect shot, where they do that a lot in the show. Let's see how this works. Okay. Focus. That looks good. I just need enough green. I don't have to worry about like shadows and other stuff. I could erase that fairly easy, cut it off if necessary. I just need each individual one shot, and then that's it. I usually give my camera 10 seconds of footage, so that either the initial, like when I push record, the camera shakes a little bit, that's out of the way, and I don't have to worry about it. Let's go with green now. I'll just go in size order. It's the second largest time flyer. I was thinking of the Time Strike finisher in one of the season openings, but that's a lot of work. It's not really CG-esque, because you could still pull it off the numbers falling down or the clock parts spinning part in 2D, so that doesn't need to be a 3D element. And it was when I was thinking about how to do it, I was like, that's probably going to take too much time, and I usually only have around 2 weeks to do these openings, and I barely finish them in time. So sometimes I actually cut corners, and I will reuse shots, which again I'll reuse a couple of shots in season 9. The season 9 opening is going to be it's going to be barely the same, but it's going to have some influences from the Dino Charge opening, and a few things that I have an idea of the use. Like the new logo for the show is very reminiscent of Dino Charge. The bottom part's the jaw piece, but not exactly. I didn't want to directly copy that, because that's kind of stupid. But I wanted to have some similarities with that opening, my opening. I always do that, and I kind of thought, well, the original logo was based off MMPR, and this is kind of like a relaunch. So I was like, why don't I just base the new logo off the modern PR logo? Couple of reflection problems. Hopefully that won't give me that much of an issue. I have to also, like, deal with the green reflection. So even if I do get, like, all of the green screen out and removed, I do have to also deal with reflections on the actual model, and I have to make it back to gray instead of green. I kind of had that issue in the Delta Megazord and the Astro Megazord. They had a kind of a green screen spill in some areas. I want to avoid that again. Oh, I guess I have red here. I might as well do red. Now, this has to be kind of like this. They're facing forward, and I need to have the camera up and a little bit of it looking down at them. Because it can't be straight on, because if you do a straight on shot, you really can't see see the flyers in that way. That's how all TV shows work. When you're shooting a plane from behind or below, you're actually looking down and not really looking forward. Although I would like to have a little bit more control, like have this slightly tilted up, but I guess I can kind of fake it because I can put the wheels in place. Because you're not going to see the bottom, so there's actually no problem with actually having the wheels out. That will give me the ability to keep them a little bit more straighter instead of them being... And I just have to be careful with the framing. So I'm also debating, do I cut off a bit of the flyer? Because when in the final shot, it will, you're not going to see the bottom parts. However, if I give it more, I can control like where I place an up or down in the frame. If I don't have enough information on the bottom, then I can't really adjust it because there'll be nothing on the bottom and I'll have it cut off. So I think I'm going to stick with this and have partial cut off, and that's pretty much it, just a partial. Now another thing I have to worry about is each flyer is going to be in a different spot. One's going to be slightly over here, so I have to also shoot them some at a slight angle, even though they still have to be in the same spot as the original one. But I still have to have the perspective change so that when they're lined up, all 5 of them will look like they're at the proper spacing. Because if you have them all straight, it's going to look weird, because when you shoot something and there's 5 different things lined up, they're not all straight. Then they slightly curve because that's the way the camera looks. So I have to slightly do that. But I can't do that within the same shot. So I have to do it over all 5 green screen shots. I have to think of these things when I'm doing these shots. Like, for example, when I have to do any animation like Titanus's cannons coming in, that's all stop motion animation that I have to do in my head and figure out. It's kind of like a math. Like, how many frames do I need to do per second? Like, usually it's 2 frames, but then how long is a shot? I have to look at the MMPR episode and then count how many frames it is. Like, say it's 20 frames, and that means I have to do 2 frames, so that's 10 frames per cannon, where it starts, where it ends. So when I do type of animation stuff, I got to be careful with that as well. I have to have this. There, that's good. This will have all of the flyer in view, and it's just going to be slightly off. Not too much, because again, another flyer will be next to it, so I can't have it that far off. Shoot it. Blue will be on the side, then I think I'll put pink, and then I'll put green, then I'll put yellow as the for the left side. Alright. Put pink. Once I pick the camera angle, I have to leave the camera angle in place. Like right now the camera can't move, because if I shift it, then the perspective is going to change. So it's going to be slightly off. So you have to basically leave the camera where it is. So luckily I have this really good tripod that locks everything down. It won't twist or go up and down if I choose not to. It's a $70 tripod, but it gets it done. When I first was doing the series, I had a $20 tripod, which is actually this camera's on right now. It can't pan and tilt smoothly. It was really ridiculous. So if you watch like season 1 and 2 and a portion of 3, you'll see whenever I try to do a pan or a tilt, the camera's just all wonky and jerky. I can't do anything. That's because that $20 tripod can't actually do anything. It just ticks in place. It doesn't actually move up and down smoothly. Green, and again, I'm always worried about green because this is a green screen. The stickers will be a little bit difficult to key out without erasing them. I'll have to do a little bit of extra finicking work in order to get them done. Well, sometimes I actually have to abandon effect shots that I thought, like there was one, like for example, the SPD Delta Command Megazord's finisher attack, which, you know, it charges up on the legs and also on the chest, and it shoots the beams out. I thought I was able to do that, but then when I watched it, it had a lot of particles and it's all this other junk that would have taken a very long time for me to figure out because I used multiple different programs in order to do some of these effect shots. And I still have the footage that and the photos of the Delta Command Megazord to recreate that shot. So maybe someday I might actually do it. I don't abandon everything forever, but sometimes I'll keep it saved for another time. That's usually that's what I usually do. All right, so we got all 5 Zords, 10 shots for 2 shots, and these shots will be difficult the most because I have to recreate the time tunnel, which is a 2D, 3D-esque effect. I got to rewatch Time Force to see how I can. Usually, I have to guess how they do the effect, and a lot of times it's more difficult than it appears. And sometimes I have to figure out how they do it. Sound effects. I also have to figure out how to recreate. Like for example, to recreate the MMPR teleport noise, I was just trying various different sound effects. Like what did they use? Because unfortunately, they never document or showed how they made a lot of the sound effects for the show, and I had to figure out how to like. Now, a portion of the teleport noise is made from a fire extinguisher. A portion of it. Usually, it's the part. That's actually a fire extinguisher slowed down slightly, and then there's an extra bass to it, and I just listened to it a lot, and I kept fiddling with it. I sped it up, slowed it down, and I tried to figure out like what did they use here. It's not an electronic noise. It's an organic noise, but I didn't know what it was until I did that. It's basically a fire extinguisher. A portion of it. And I don't know exactly how they did everything, like the beginning piece where the thing comes on and then before they go up, that part. I'm not exactly sure how they did it. It's most likely a synthesizer little bit where they're on a keyboard, they have a sound, and they modify that sound with the synthesizer bit, and then that's what starts that. There's other sound effects that I try to figure out, like SPDs, like some of the SPD weapon noises. I'm trying to think, like, how do they do that noise? Couple other sound effects, and like I found out then to do some sort of laser sounds, a lot of times they use slinkies to do it. If you have a metal slinky and you stretch it out and you bang it with something, usually a metal like screwdriver, anything, it could be a plastic. If you bang it and you put the microphone on above it or below it, you'll get these reverbing noises that sound like a laser, and in fact that's what Star Trek uses for a lot of its phaser sound effects. Or photon torpedoes from the first Star Trek series. They use that kind of reverb slinky in order to do those things. It goes boom, and they even use it in the 2009 film and Into Darkness. That's pretty much what I do. It's a lot of work to figure out how to do a lot of these sound effects, or the visual effects. It's a lot of work to figure out how to do them, but I enjoy doing them, and I never liked when TV shows would, they run for like 10, 15 years, like say, for example, Stargate. I never liked it that majority of the time the opening isn't changed. It's the same one over and over and over again. And unfortunately, over time, people get bored of the opening, and that's usually why they don't want to like watch it anymore. So unfortunately nowadays, openings don't exist. They usually just have the text for the logo, and then that's it. That's the end of it. And I miss openings, and I really wish over the years a lot more companies would change the opening so that it wouldn't be boring after so many years. I mean, yeah, it could still get boring, but still, I'd rather have it different in some capacity, whether it's a few shots, a whole new thing, a new song entirely, whatever. I prefer it that way. So that's why I usually try to change the opening as much as I can every season. I don't like it to be the same thing because it just bores people. I personally don't like it, so I always try to think of an effect shot that, I thought that was really cool in, I don't know, I'll be watching it at some RPM. I was like, that was a really nice effect shot. How did they do that? How did Japan do it? The US do it? They have different means in order to do different effect shots. MMPR's effect shots, like, I always wanted to have the dinosaurs, move like they do in the show, except the problem is the toys are not articulate enough like what they use in the actual show, which are models too, but they can, like, for example, the saber-toothed tiger, that actually can move itself. Its feet can move. The background is basically a conveyor belt that just loops forever, and that's how they pull it off. And I always wanted it done, but the toys are very limited, so I never could actually do those shots. There's a couple of shots that I can do that I would like to do over again. Like, I could do I did it in season 2 with the Megazord, you know, the pterodactyl coming down and locking on. That I could do better. And you could do it with a model. It's just getting the desert portion to be good. And I was always considering I could do that in a 3D program, the desert portion, because doing it to 2D would be too difficult because there's no shot to recreate that. You have to put it together with a 3D background, which would not be that difficult. I could one day redo that shot so it actually matches and more realistic. But there are shots like, for example, the Dragonzord going into battle mode. That's extremely difficult to do because that's all mechanical parts and different actual things that are models that are actually designed to do that. To open up, to close the chest piece, or to pull the chest piece out. Those are all on armatures that are all motorized. I can't do that. The only logical way I could do it is if I said, I did it in CG, but that means I have to model a Dragonzord in CG, and that's a lot of work, and for really ultimately 2 shots, and it's just like, that's too much work. I wouldn't have the time to do that unless I had a Dragonzord model already pre-done and textured, and I could animate it then. Still, it's a lot of work, and I'd rather stick with the actual toys and not do CG, because to me that's what the show is, models and stuff rather than CG, so I always like doing it that way. Well, basically that's how I shoot some of the effect shots. Some are more complicated than the others, and some are easier than others. Like I'll photograph them and then cut them out of Photoshop and then do them that way. But sometimes I'll do this, where it'll be on a green screen. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this exclusive video for patrons. I wanted to do something, I couldn't really think of anything, so I thought this would have been interesting for you guys to see how I film these bits and pieces. I rarely ever show this.